Right.
And road transportation construction is very important that the next generation be trained, and we can get some of these young people that really we can focus them on being our future transportation construction workers.
Mr. Chair, Malcolm Doherty, Caltrans Director. I mean, we would wholeheartedly agree. We have done work with the Conservation Corps as well as apprenticeship programs. There are both state and federal dollars for training up for the workforce that we need. There's always opportunities to be more effective and also add to those training opportunities. And one thing that the Federal Highway Administration is doing as a pilot that we need to get engaged in is a local hiring preference, which we have not done on a statewide basis. So we'll probably be piloting that in the upcoming year to be able to target some of those high unemployment areas.
Yes, I think the social fabric of our state needs to have that when we make our state investments. That's my other questions from, let's hear from some of our members. Senator McGuire, Senator Bates, Senator McGuire, and Senator Pavley. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm Barry Hill.
Chair, and I neglected to thank the Chair for all the work that went into today's hearing and on the package that you're bringing forward. I know that you've been spending months on this, bringing all sides together, and I'm sorry I didn't mention that. Just appreciate all your effort. And I also want to say thank you to Mr. Kelly. He has one of the more demanding jobs here at the state. And along with Mr. Doherty is all over the state of California visiting various sites, and just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. Know that you have a lot coming at you at the moment, and we just need to get that STIP fund a little higher as well. So, but that will be a separate conversation, some good times. But again, in all sincerity, thank you for all of your work, and greatly appreciate it. And just a few items on highway and roads is I would hope that our focus is going to be on the existing infrastructure. And I know it's not the sexiest of issues in looking at existing infrastructure, but rather than continuing to look at something new, we have a deteriorating infrastructure, whether it's the $59 billion on the state highway system or even more on our local roads. And with cap and trade dollars, continuing to put those dollars to work for transit is great. And I would hope, like for example, Sonoma County, we have 330 bridges and hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to deal with it, most built in at the turn of the century through the 30s in the 20th century. So I think that would hope that that is going to be the major focus of what we're bringing forward. And then the other piece is how we can expedite the process. And I'm going to give you an example. In Marin, Sonoma, Mendocino County, you have to go through the regional board to do ditching in the county. And you have to get a special permit, which takes 5 to 6 months simply to ditch. We have to be able to fix this so that we can actually get the roads, the dollars fixing the roads and get it to work. And what I would hope is that we're going to be able to look in a very sincere and respectful way how we can expedite some of these projects, and particularly on issues like this, which, by the way, holds up state dollars and local dollars for a full construction season, so that we spend one season trying to secure the permits to ditch, and then a second season to actually pay. What can we do to actually expedite these dollars so that they're actually put to work on local roads, as well as our state highway system? So those are just a few comments. And Mr. Chair, I'm going to have to run over to the Health Committee, and I apologize. But again, thank you, and appreciate the ability to comment.
My spiritual body is over there also in terms of the Health Committee. So I'm on both committees also. So Senator Bates, yes, thank you, Senator. And Senator Pavley. Barry.
It is quite challenging, your job, and I know in Orange County we've beaten up the district director a couple of times, and he's great, Ryan Chamberlain. But anyway, and we thank both of you for working with us over a very, very tumultuous debate on the toll lanes on the 405. You were both so available, and I want you to know how much we appreciated that. Just a question on the staffing issue that was raised with the Legislative Analyst Office, and are you addressing that in the performance metrics? And providing, I would assume that the way to reduce staff is through incentives for early retirements or however many agencies approach that. Have you built that into your going forward? Because it's critical. I guess I can repeat the number, 500 million might be available with some sort of staff reduction. I don't know how that plays with, if all of a sudden you have a lot of work and we need to accelerate it, do you need more people? But that's your job to balance that. And is there any direction that you have internally to address that critical issue?
Well, I appreciate the question, Senator. I might start with a high-level answer and then ask Malcolm to give you perhaps a more director-in-the-weeds answer. I first want to just talk about the capital outlay support staff. When we passed Proposition 1B in 2006, we knew there'd be a big workload increase. And in fact, at one of the Budget Committee hearings back then, I think LAO had suggested that we may need to staff up as much as 4,800 FTEs, full-time equivalents, to deliver that program. We did not staff up that high. We staffed up during that timeline 463. Since that time, since the delivery of much of the 1B program and some of the ARA programs, we have been in a steady decline in the COS budget and personnel. I believe, I'm going to give you numbers on the order of, but I believe in the last 5 budget cycles, we have now reduced the COS PYs by 3,400. So we are in a constant reduction mode. This year we did 178, I believe, in the budget this year, and so we are constantly in that declining mode as workload has dropped. And I think that's the really important point, is we do go through processes to establish workload, staff size tied to workload. And that's, that's why we went up a bit for 1B and why we've been in a downtrend since it's been on the delivery side. So we are reducing that staff size as we are on the precipice of potential new revenue for transportation and expectations that we will deliver. There will be some need to level off that decrease and maybe turn it a bit. There is always a question on what kind of flexible resources you need from the staff side to do short-term stuff or one-time money for one-time projects, and that's part of the mix that we're going to have a discussion about. But I wanted to at least make you aware that, one, we never did staff up for some of the estimates that were put out there for 1B, but since 1B has been delivered, we have had a steady decline in our PYs of 3,400. So that's the state of things now, and we do always try to just tie what the staff level is to the necessary workload.
Thanks. And the only thing that I would, just a couple of things that I would add, I will put some specific numbers to the high picture that Secretary Kelly looked at, but I'll start off by saying we're always striving to make sure that we are working as efficiently as we possibly can on not only project delivery, but maintenance and traffic operations, the owner-operator side of the house. We're also trying to make sure that we're as lean as we possibly can in delivering that workload. And we're managing that workload not only by looking at this year's workload, but we're looking 3, 4, 5 years in advance. Now, 4 or 5 years in advance, it gets a little fuzzier than it is 2 or 3 years in advance. But that's why the staffing reductions that Secretary Kelly talked about occurred, because we were looking on the horizon and we knew after we delivered Proposition 1B, we were not going to have that workload. In fiscal year 2000-2008, we had 13,125 FTEs, full-time equivalents, which would be our in-house staff as well as consultants. And in 15-16, we're at 9,700. That's a 25% reduction. When the recommendation came out for the 3,500 reduction, I don't think it adequately reflected that we were reducing staff over that period of time. I think it was a recommendation that was based off of the fact that the Prop 1B allocations were sunsetting, and that's an accurate fact. But that workload does not end at the last allocation. We have years of construction work to do to complete. So we feel like we've been very closely managing the workload generated from those dollars. We've been in attrition mode to be able to be as lean and mean as we possibly can. And on the heels of that recommendation, the legislature asked the Bureau of State Audits to come in and audit the department. Now, there were a lot of scathing recommendations that the auditor gave us, and we're still working diligently to address those. But one of the things that it did say, the auditor did say, is that our budget request process for the support program and the resources we need is reasonable, and that both the list of projects and other costs included in the budget request for Caltrans's support program, which is the COS, were accurate and adequately supported, and that the process for staffing appears adequate. So they were critical of us in many ways, but they were not critical of us in how we develop our workload, and I think that's a reflection of us looking off into the distance and trying to have the right staffing levels. There's always opportunities for greater efficiencies, and we're always working to that end.
Appreciate that. I do think it'll be helpful to all of us as we're looking for those transportation dollars to have something back from you all on this $500 million. It is plugged into some of the solutions that are coming forward. If you already achieved that with your staff reductions, that would be helpful to know. If you did, half of it, we don't need to be putting numbers that really aren't there into potential solutions and how we would raise revenue to fill, let's say, the $500 million gap. Now, if we put it into the proposal and it doesn't really exist, we need to know why. That would be very helpful if you can get that information to us.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Pavley, and then Senator Berryhill and Senator Leyva.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation, Kelly. I was just glancing through your list of 80-something projects and the $225 million worth of greenhouse gas dollars just went out the door. And from what I've looked at it seems to be a pretty good comprehensive list focused all over the state for the intended purposes of the expenditures of cap and trade dollars. So there's many people here who think cap and trade dollars could be part of this solution. And I'm not making commentary today about whether it should or shouldn't be, but with the definition or the way you describe this program as the priority should be fix it first, the infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, I'm not sure that would work within the possible expansion of cap and trade dollars for the purposes we're discussing. But it could, perhaps, thinking of Senator Hertzberg's eloquent commentary of a way to accomplish that. So it's something we should all collectively think about. I'm not discouraging the fix it first, given all our priority lists, but maybe there is an opportunity to also move things forward, connecting with the goals of getting people out of their cars or other strategies that could allow for expenditures of cap and trade dollars, if that's the choice and direction people want to go. In the list of all possibilities, Senator Bell, I think you had that as a possibility. We'd have to really examine that carefully.
I've heard it from other sources. The question probably is...
Mostly the people who don't like 1832 or cap and trade, they all want the money now.
Yeah. Well, the question would be, does road repair, what elements, the question would be, what elements of road repair engender greenhouse gas emission reductions? And if so, what is the cost effectiveness of that versus other greenhouse gas emission reduction options that we have to decide on when we discuss the cap and trade program? That's the way I would look at it, Senator. I don't know.
Combining it with transit stations or other things that are also supported but meet all the nexus tests.
They have to meet the nexus test, but do they have any direct impact on greenhouse gas reductions? And perhaps you can get us some information on that question. Okay.
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to work toward getting you some information on that. I would just say that the current structure of the cap and trade program is reflective of the type of fee that the cap and trade program is, and And they're, I'm not a lawyer for ARB, but they are the ones managing the program, and the nexus issue is quite important under that fee structure. So I think what I would first say is the structure of the allowable uses for cap and trade right now have been closely tied to quantifiable greenhouse gas emission reductions, and they have to be. That's, we all would say that's appropriate. I think the question that might be the question going forward on cap and trade for other uses is it still going to be the current fee structure it is, or would it be something else? Is it a 2/3 vote, program that the legislature is determining, monies go different places? That's a different dynamic and a different structure. But under the structure we have now, we like our investment program a lot. We put out our first $370 million in cap and trade dollars this week, and 70% of that went to transit.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Berryhill.
Yeah, I want to echo everybody's thanking you for coming here. I know you've put a lot of time and effort into this project. And listen, I think we got tremendous opportunity here to get something done for California. We as Republicans have a tremendous opportunity to get in trouble also. But that being said, I want to kind of set the bar. Have we agreed that our goal for revenues is what's our need? $5 to $6 billion a year? I mean, what are we looking at?
Okay.
We won't hold you hard and fast.
Answer it as you like.
He wants the cold, hard truth.
I think the senator has some thoughts on that. We have worked to try to really make sure that and this again gets a little bit to what Mr. Hertzberg said earlier and Ms. Bates said earlier about accountability for what you're doing with numbers. I am reluctant to chase a number and high on saying, let's talk about what we want to deliver and then putting a number to that. We would say on the state asset side that we've mentioned the 5.7, that's the shop figure. I recognize it's going to be tough to get all 5.7 just for the shop. I understand that. But even within the shop, there are directed investments in pavement condition, in bridge condition, in maintenance issues that we can tie an expenditure string together and say, if we invest this much, here's the improvements we can make in those areas. And we think that's going to be no less than, $2.5 billion to make achievements in some of those areas. And then there, as others have said, there are local and other needs that you all may want to address as well. And so we have to accommodate that. So I'm reluctant to put a firm number on it other than to say, I know on the state side, we see in that area, again, 5.7, if we did the whole shop, something less if we were going to do targeted achievements, but we ought to tie it to achievements and then move forward on that basis. So it's hard to pick the overall number. But
yeah, this is interesting because I think historically the 1B measure, as you mentioned, did work. That money did go to those roads. And I think that everybody here on this conference committee is working to get to yes. And I think that there's going to be a way that we can do that at the end of the day. I think Senator Cannella mentioned it in his opening remarks. And I think everybody understands that to be competitive globally, we've got to be able to move goods and services. I mean, it's just, and this is a maintenance thing. Having said that, what our challenge is, in my opinion, is that, again, reverting back to Senator Bates, and I think Senator Hertzberg mentioned it also, is our credibility. Mm-hmm. Because over the years, historically, we've taxed, we've had transportation taxes through gas and whatnot, and as soon as the government, as our economy, tanks, those are the first monies that we borrow, and so getting language tight enough to guarantee, that money's going to go to those roads, and yeah, do we have to maybe poke these guys a little bit and get a little bit more counties to do the self-help thing? Yeah, I do think we have to do that. But that being said, I think that there is a way to get there. I look forward to working with everybody. I think that to get compromise on both sides of the aisle, I think that we should look at some cap and trade money perhaps, or I think we've talked about the weight money that we have borrowed that should be absolutely going to, and hasn't been, which is one of the reasons why our roads haven't been maintained. And so, you know, for us to go back to our constituents and say, this is a good deal for you, we've got to make sure that we write this thing pretty tight.
I appreciate those comments, Senator.
Senator Leyva is next. Senator.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you both very much for being here. I'm very excited to be here. I think we have a real opportunity for this to be a real game changer for the state of California. However, I don't disagree with anything that anybody said. I think we have a very thoughtful chair. I think we have a very thoughtful committee. And I think we do have to focus on the infrastructure and the roads and the bridges and redoing those. But I want us, as Senator Hertzberg said, to also be big thinkers. SD 20, my district, is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, goods movement district. So how do we get people off the roads? Is it Metrolink? Is it the Gold Line? It's other forms of transportation so that those goods can move more freely from the Port of LA into the district, because it's not going to get, there will be less, there will be more. So I have that question. Go ahead, you want to answer that first?
I'll try. Well, yeah, I mean, I appreciate Senator Hertzberg's comment and yours, your follow-up here on the integrated nature of our system. You know, we are, in many ways, transportation's in a real period of transformation in California. We have new objectives that we are seeking to seek out of the system that were not part of our primary objectives before, primarily in the area of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and really getting to how you build a transportation system in the era of climate change. That is a profound challenge, and it's one that we are trying to navigate together. We are using, as I said, cap and trade funds right now to help really partner with regions and counties and others on providing clean, alternative, viable transportation options that are generally public transit, active transportation, and in our view, high-speed rail. So that's on that side. Then on the other side, we've got these other issues. We've got trade and the goods movement and the condition of our system and other pressures to expand the system. And you want to try to do it in a way where you're not encouraging more vehicle miles traveled. So I would describe it as, trying to put together a system where you are providing good, viable transportation options so that people can make good choices. And that takes a lot of investment of different kind of money. And we are doing our best to work through that. One of the reasons your comments on trade are right on. And, I look back at 2006 and the bond bill and I'm very proud of that trade program. I think it was a very effective program that achieved much of what it was trying to achieve. I would also say that we coupled that program with other monies in that bond bill to make sure we were taking care of the environmental impacts of trade. Dealing with communities that are near ports and dealing with the effects of that. And so I think it's a combined effort in that area. But ideally, the idea, in my view, is the right kind of resources to the right objectives that are providing viable travel options for folks so they can make good decisions in this era of climate change and that we can achieve many things.
We're kind of approaching the time where we have to kind of rush through a little bit. But yeah, you had another question. Yeah, go ahead.
All I want to say is thanks for the $41 million.
Oh, you got the big dollar. Okay, there we go. I have to look at that list.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator, Chairman Fraser and Senator Allen has a question. So,
thank you, Mr. Secretary and Executive Director, for coming today. We've talked about self-help counties making huge efforts to be part of the solution. We're talking about senators and assembly members making hard votes to capitalize on this, where we are in time right now, to be able to get as much money out there as we can. What is the administration, or you, Mr. Secretary, working to do with the federal government? Because we do take 40% of the impact for the movement of goods and services in this state. What is the federal government going to do to leverage our money so that we can actually work forward to that purpose?
dark cloud, I think.
Well, a couple of things. First, we've articulated a set of priorities to the federal government that we think if they focus on it, it's good for California. Trade is a key example. We've got a huge trade corridor here, and to the extent that the federal government includes in a funding package a focus nationally on trade, California will benefit. We are always seeking to have the federal government provide more based on a higher population matrix or other things that would also improve California. But I think I want to say something that may sound a little bit cynical, and I maybe apologize for that, but I also think it's important that we don't wait for the federal government. I think we have to move forward. We are always in a position, I should say too, we're always in a position, the federal government does do a pretty good job at getting transit grants out and full funding grant agreements, and we are always in a position to compete well because we have so much transit in California. Also, you guys should all know that every year when states don't spend their federal money, states that have spent their federal money receive that money and spend it. And every year California receives some of that. So I think last year it was on the order of $136 million in September, where other states couldn't deliver, we did. So we're always in a position to use the federal largesse, and we need it. But they're now on something like the 34th continuing resolution to get a multi-year transportation package together, and we got to move. I think our focus is to get what we can get done here, continue to work with them on all the things we must work with them on, but I don't want to wait for their funding package.
Senator Allen. Then what we'll do is we'll get everybody, the next panel, come up forward, please.
It's just to associate myself with some of the comments made by Senator Leyva with regards to public transit. And kind of following up on what Senator Berryhill said as well, I really do think that in some of our urban cores, the lack of mobility is becoming a really serious economic issue. And I'm hearing from small business owners who are just so concerned about mobility and the quality of life and helping to move cities like Los Angeles and some of our other urban centers into the modern era with regards to decent public transit options and rail options is just so important, and something I'm going to really be wanting to focus on.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and we'll ask all the next combined panel to come forward, and I'll also ask Brian Kelly to thank the governor for calling the special session. Thank you, Governor Brown, for pointing this as a real problem. We appreciate that.